Picture two apartment doors in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood. Same building, same floor, similar monthly rent. Both residents work professional jobs downtown. But step through those doors and you'll witness two completely different financial worlds. Walk into Marcus Chen's apartment first. Marcus brings home $97,000 annually working in tech. His living room revolves around a massive 75-inch TV mounted on the exposed brick. Beneath it sprawls a leather sectional that cost him $4,000. Head into the kitchen and you'll spot appliances everywhere. An air fryer still sealed in its packaging, a bread maker used exactly twice, a juicer shoved behind the blender collecting dust. His bedroom closet can barely close from all the clothes jammed inside, and at least a third still have price tags dangling. The spare bedroom has transformed into a storage unit for camping equipment from one trip 3 years ago, ski gear gathering cobwebs, and boxes of electronics he doesn't remember purchasing. When Marcus checks his bank balance, anxiety floods through him. He's roughly 2 months of missed paychecks away from complete disaster. One surprise car repair, one medical emergency, one unexpected layoff, and everything collapses. Now, cross the hallway to James Rivera's place. James earns $54,000 each year teaching. Push open his door, and immediately you notice space to breathe. A modest couch faces a reasonably sized television. The kitchen holds precisely the tools that actually get used. A quality knife, one dependable pan, a well-worn cutting board. His closet contains only clothes he genuinely wears. Nothing hanging there from guilt or forgotten shopping trips. That spare bedroom, it functions as an actual bedroom, ready whenever his sister flies in from Phoenix. When James pulls up his bank account, he feels nothing but calm. He's built savings covering 18 complete months of living expenses. Every single paycheck, 20% flows automatically into investments before he touches a dollar. Same neighborhood, similar apartments. Yet the person earning nearly half as much has constructed roughly 10 times the financial security. This contrast isn't about their salary differences. It's about the hidden connection between possessions and money that most people never calculate. Marcus isn't reckless with money in obvious ways. He doesn't gamble. He doesn't have expensive addictions. He simply accumulated a lifestyle requiring every dollar he earns just to maintain. James discovered something transformative. He realized that owning less doesn't diminish life quality. It makes life deliberate, and deliberate living generates financial margin that most high earners never experience. Today, I'm walking you through minimalist money principles, separating people who consistently have money from people who consistently don't, regardless of income level. These aren't about deprivation. They're about recognizing that every object you own carries ongoing costs you've likely never totaled. Let me introduce a concept that'll reshape how you view purchases for life. Every single possession carries a double price tag. The first price is visible, whatever appears on your receipt, then the amount you pay at checkout. But a second price exists that most people completely overlook, and frequently it exceeds what you originally spent. This second price includes space costs, maintenance demands, mental energy drain, and sacrificed opportunities. Consider that treadmill occupying your spare room. It requires physical space in your home, space costing real money. Across most urban areas, residential space runs between $30 and $50 per square foot annually in rent or mortgage. A treadmill needs about 20 square feet when you include clearance space so you don't crash into walls. That's $600 to $1,000 yearly you're implicitly paying just to store exercise equipment that primarily holds laundry. This second price also encompasses maintenance and upkeep. That boat in your driveway demands winterization each fall, consistent cleaning, yearly registration, insurance premiums, and repairs when components fail. Boating industry wisdom suggests annual maintenance typically runs around 10% of the boat's value. A $30,000 boat costs $3,000 per year merely to possess, even if it never leaves the driveway. I'm not done. The second price includes mental bandwidth. Every possession consumes a sliver of your attention. It requires cleaning, organizing, maintaining, insuring, worrying about, and eventually discarding. Research has actually quantified this. Visual clutter elevates cortisol levels and diminishes your brain's focusing capacity. Your stuff is literally stressing you in ways you can't consciously perceive. There's more still. At the second price includes opportunity cost, alternative uses for that money. Every dollar trapped in possessions is a dollar not invested in growing. That $15,000 home gym could have been $15,000 in index funds expanding to $50,000 or beyond over 15 years. You didn't just purchase gym equipment, you purchased gym equipment instead of future financial independence. Add these hidden costs together, and many possessions ultimately cost more to own than to buy. The purchase price merely gets you in the door. The ongoing costs continue draining resources as long as you keep the item. Minimalists grasp this intuitively. They're not rejecting possessions because they dislike nice things. They're rejecting possessions because they've calculated the true total and decided most items aren't worth it. That this understanding leads to the first rule minimalists follow consistently. Rule 1. Calculate cost per use before purchasing anything. Before buying any non-essential item, estimate how many times you'll genuinely use it. Divide total cost by that number. This produces cost per use, the only honest value measurement. A $200 jacket worn twice costs $100 per wear. A $400 jacket worn 200 times costs $2 per wear. The pricier jacket actually delivers better value by any meaningful metric. This single calculation kills most impulse purchases instantly. That $300 kitchen gadget you'll use twice yearly costs $150 per use in year 1. That's an outrageously expensive way to accomplish whatever it does. Meanwhile, a $30 tool used weekly costs under 60 cents per use in year 1. Cost per use also reveals which purchases genuinely make sense. A $2,000 mattress used nightly for 10 years costs about 55 cents per use. That's extraordinary value for something affecting your health and energy every single day. A $1,500 espresso machine used daily for 5 years costs under $1 per use, likely saving money versus coffee shop visits. The mathematics cuts through marketing, emotion, and social pressure. It exposes what actually makes financial sense versus what merely feels appealing in the moment. Rule 2. Apply the replacement test to everything you already own. Walk through your home, examining each possession. Ask yourself one simple question. If this item vanished today, would I spend money replacing it? Be brutally honest. Would you actually repurchase another fondue set? Would you replace that bread maker buried in the cabinet? Would you buy those clothes you haven't touched in 18 months? For most items, the truthful answer is no. You wouldn't replace them. They occupy your space through inertia, not intention. They were impulse purchases, obligatory gifts, or remnants of abandoned hobbies and past phases. These items hold negative value. They cost you space, mental energy, and maintenance without providing corresponding benefit. Every hour spent organizing, cleaning around, or thinking about items you wouldn't replace is an hour stolen from activities that genuinely matter. Minimalists ruthlessly eliminate possessions failing the replacement test. They sell what holds value. Donate what others could use, discard what serves nobody. The process feels uncomfortable initially, then liberating once complete. The psychological burden of owning things you neither want nor need is substantial. Removing that burden creates mental clarity that's challenging to describe, but immediately noticeable. Rooms feel larger. Decisions feel simpler. Cleaning takes half the time. You know where everything lives because everything remaining serves a purpose. Rule 3. Never upgrade out of boredom. There's a pattern I constantly observe among people earning solid incomes but accumulating nothing. They upgrade perfectly functional items simply because they're bored or because newer versions exist. Their television works flawlessly, but the latest model offers slightly improved contrast. Their phone operates perfectly, but the new release features a marginally better camera. Their car runs reliably, but this year's model has refreshed styling. Their furniture serves its function, but they've grown tired of looking at it. These upgrades feel like improvements. They're actually wealth destruction disguised as progress. Minimalists maintain a strict policy: never replace anything functioning properly. The phone making calls, sending messages, and running apps doesn't need replacement because a newer phone exists. The car reliably transporting you doesn't need replacement because your neighbor bought something shinier. This policy saves enormous amounts over a lifetime. Average Americans replace phones every 2 to 3 years, often while the previous phone works perfectly. Over 30 years. This pattern wastes $30,000 to $50,000 in unnecessary purchases. Applied across all categories where upgrade culture operates: electronics, furniture, cars, appliances, lifetime waste easily exceeds $200,000. Minimalists escape this trap by defining functional clearly. An item remains functional until it genuinely fails to serve its purpose. Boredom isn't failure. Desire for novelty isn't failure. The existence of newer alternatives isn't failure. Actual mechanical breakdown or genuine inability to perform required tasks constitutes failure. Everything else is marketing convincing you to solve problems you don't have. Rule 4. Create friction for spending and ease for saving. Human behavior follows the path of least resistance. If spending comes easy and saving feels difficult, you'll spend. If saving comes easy and spending feels difficult, you'll save. Minimalists engineer their environment, making the right choice the easy choice. Spending friction looks like removing saved credit cards from online retailers, requiring a 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase, deleting shopping apps from your phone, unsubscribing from promotional emails, and avoiding stores unless you have a specific planned purchase. Saving ease looks like automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday, keeping only minimal amounts in easily accessible checking, making investment contributions happen before you see the money, and treating savings like a fixed expense rather than an afterthought. These structural changes matter more than willpower. Willpower depletes throughout the day. Environment remains constant. Someone relying on willpower to avoid impulse purchases will eventually fail when tired, stressed, or emotional. Someone who deleted shopping apps and removed saved credit cards simply cannot impulse purchase in that moment. Minimalists don't trust themselves to consistently make optimal decisions. They design systems making good decisions automatic. The 24-hour waiting rule alone eliminates roughly 70% of impulse purchases. Most desires for objects fade within a day, if not immediately acted upon. Rule 5. Count your possessions regularly. This sounds excessive until you actually do it. Counting forces awareness. Awareness prevents accumulation. Pick a category. Count how many items you own in that category. Write the number down. The results often shock people who've never examined their consumption objectively. Or how many shirts do you own? Most people guess low and discover they possess 3 or 4 times their estimate. How many kitchen gadgets? How many shoes? How many items stuffed in junk drawers? How many books you'll never read again? The count itself changes behavior. Once you know you own 47 shirts, buying another feels different. You're not adding a shirt. You're expanding your collection to 48. The absurdity becomes visible. Minimalists track key categories over time. They set maximum limits, perhaps 30 clothing items total, perhaps 15 books at any moment, perhaps a one-in, one-out policy where any new purchase requires removing something existing. These constraints prevent lifestyle creep. Without intentional limits, possessions expand, filling available space. With limits, and each addition requires conscious decision about what it's replacing. That friction alone dramatically reduces acquisition. Rule 6. Rent or borrow before buying. Most items people purchase get used intensively briefly, then rarely afterward. The excitement of newness fades. Initial enthusiasm decreases. The item joins the collection of things owned but seldom touched. Minimalists test this pattern by renting or borrowing before committing to ownership. Want to try camping? Rent equipment for initial trips. Want to explore woodworking? Borrow tools from friends or use maker spaces. Want a kayak? Rent several times before purchasing. This approach accomplishes 2 things. First, it reveals whether enthusiasm is genuine or temporary. Many interests fade after initial exploration. Better discovering this while renting than after purchasing equipment collecting dust indefinitely. Second, it clarifies exactly what you need. First-time campers often buy too much or buy wrong things. Renting lets you learn before committing. When you eventually purchase, you buy precisely what's necessary rather than guessing. The buy-first mentality costs people enormously over lifetimes. Closets and garages across America contain dusty remnants of abandoned hobbies. Ski equipment from when they thought they'd ski regularly. Photography gear from when they imagined becoming serious photographers. Musical instruments from bands that played twice. Minimalists avoid becoming museums of past enthusiasm. They test interests before investing. They maintain flexibility to explore without ownership burden. Rule 7. Understand the lifestyle multiplier effect. Every possession connects to other possessions. A boat requires a trailer, a vehicle with towing capacity, storage fees, maintenance supplies, safety equipment, and appropriate clothing. A purchase seeming singular actually triggers cascading supporting purchases. This is the lifestyle multiplier. Major purchases multiply into ecosystems of related expenses. True cost is never just the item itself. Watch how this unfolds with common purchases. A home gym requires flooring, mirrors, storage solutions, ventilation improvements, and often renovations making space suitable. A pool requires chemicals, cleaning equipment, covers, furniture, maintenance tools, and typically landscaping complementing the installation. A motorcycle requires gear, storage, maintenance equipment, and often a truck or trailer for transport to riding locations. Minimalists calculate full ecosystem cost before major purchases. They know a $5,000 purchase might actually represent $8,000 or $12,000 when multiplier expenses are included. This complete accounting often transforms seemingly reasonable purchases into clearly excessive ones. The multiplier effect works in reverse too. Eliminating one major possession often eliminates entire categories of related expenses. Selling the boat means no more storage fees, insurance, registration, maintenance, or towing costs. Savings extend far beyond the item's value. Rule 8. Define enough before you start earning. Here's something trapping high earners constantly. They never define what enough looks like, so they keep purchasing more without ever reaching satisfaction. Their income increases, so they upgrade lifestyle. The new lifestyle becomes normal, so they need another income increase to feel progress. This cycle continues indefinitely. People earning $300,000 feel just as financially stressed as people earning $80,000 because expectations and expenses expanded alongside income. Minimalists break this cycle by defining enough before they start earning significantly. They decide in advance what kind of home is sufficient, what kind of transportation meets needs, what level of material comfort constitutes genuine satisfaction. Then they earn toward that target, rather than constantly moving goalposts. This might mean deciding a $350,000 home is enough even if you eventually could afford $600,000. It might mean deciding a $30,000 car is enough even when colleagues drive $70,000 vehicles. It might mean deciding your current wardrobe is enough even as income could support constant upgrades. Defining enough creates a finish line. Without it, you're running an endless race where lifestyle expansion always outpaces income growth. With it, you reach a point where additional income flows entirely to saving and investing rather than consumption. The person who defined enough at $60,000 of annual spending then started earning $150,000 builds wealth at extraordinary rates. The $90,000 difference between income and enough goes directly to financial freedom. Meanwhile, someone earning the same $150,000 but constantly redefining enough upward might save almost nothing. Rule 9. Measure wealth by optionality, not accumulation. Conventional thinking measures wealth by what you have: houses, cars, possessions, visible success markers. Minimalists measure wealth differently. They measure it by what they can choose. Can you leave a job destroying your mental health? Can you take 6 months off handling a family emergency? Can you move to a new city for a relationship? Can you start a business without guaranteed income? Can you retire before 65? Can you decline opportunities paying well but compromising values? These options represent true wealth. They're only available to people who've built substantial margin between income and expenses. The person earning $200,000 but spending $195,000 has almost no optionality. They're chained to their income requirement. The person earning $80,000 but spending $45,000 has extraordinary optionality. They can absorb disruptions, take risks, and make choices based on preference rather than financial necessity. Minimalists understand that optionality requires liquid resources more than physical possessions. Money tied up in a car you don't need is money that can't buy your freedom when needed. Home equity locked in excess house is equity that can't fund career transitions or extended sabbaticals. This perspective transforms spending decisions. Each purchase isn't just exchanging money for an object. It's trading optionality for possession. Is this item worth reducing your ability to make free choices about your life? Sometimes yes, often no. Rule 10. Practice cyclical decluttering rather than annual purging. Most people attempting minimalism do massive purges, feel great briefly, then gradually accumulate back to starting points. The purge feels productive. Gradual reaccumulation goes unnoticed. Within 2 years, they're right back where they started. Minimalists avoid this through cyclical decluttering. Rather than annual massive purges, they perform small regular reviews. Weekly glances at incoming items, monthly evaluation of one category, quarterly assessment of overall accumulation trends. This cyclical approach catches accumulation early before it rebuilds to overwhelming levels. Removing 3 items weekly is manageable and sustainable. Removing 300 items once yearly feels overwhelming and often gets postponed indefinitely. The cyclical approach also maintains awareness. When you evaluate possessions regularly, you notice patterns. You see which categories tend to grow. You identify which emotional states trigger acquisition. You recognize which marketing tactics work on you specifically. This awareness enables prevention rather than just treatment. Let me give you practical implementation starting today. This week, walk through your home with the replacement test in mind. Identify 10 items you wouldn't replace if they disappeared. Sell, donate, or discard those items. Notice how removing things you don't actually want feels. This month, implement the 24-hour rule for all non-essential purchases. Track how many purchase desires survive the waiting period versus how many evaporate. The data will reveal how much spending is impulsive rather than intentional. This quarter, count possessions in 3 categories that typically accumulate. Clothing, kitchen items, and media or entertainment are useful starting points. Set maximum thresholds for each category based on what you actually use. This year, define what enough looks like across major spending categories. What home is sufficient? What transportation is adequate? What wardrobe meets genuine needs? Write these definitions down. Refer to them when temptation arises to exceed your own standards. The financial transformation from these practices compounds over time. Someone applying these rules consistently for 5 years accumulates substantially less while saving substantially more. The gap between lifestyle and income creates wealth impossible to build any other way. Here's what nobody tells you about minimalism and money. The relationship flows both directions. Owning less creates more money, but having more money also makes owning less feel natural. When your savings account is robust and investments are growing, the urge to accumulate diminishes. The psychological need driving most consumption, the need for security and status, gets satisfied by financial strength rather than physical possessions. You don't need stuff to feel successful because your bank account already tells you the story you want to hear. People trapped in consumption cycles often can't explain why they buy so much. The truth usually is that spending temporarily fills an emotional void that financial insecurity creates. Address the insecurity through actual financial strength, and the compulsion to spend often dissolves on its own. This creates a virtuous cycle. Spending less leads to saving more. Saving more creates security. Security reduces emotional drive to spend. Reduced spending accelerates saving further. Each turn of the cycle reinforces the next. The opposite cycle is equally powerful but destructive. Spending everything creates insecurity. Insecurity drives more spending as temporary emotional relief. More spending deepens insecurity. The cycle continues until some external shock forces a breaking point. The choice between these cycles determines financial trajectory more than income ever could. High earners trapped in the destructive cycle build nothing. Modest earners riding the virtuous cycle build everything. The minimalist rules I've outlined aren't about suffering or deprivation. They're about recognizing that most consumption doesn't actually improve life satisfaction. Research consistently shows that beyond a baseline of security and comfort, additional purchases contribute minimally to well-being. Yet most people spend as if happiness scales linearly with spending. Minimalists align behavior with this research. They spend enough to be comfortable, then redirect excess toward freedom rather than accumulation. They end up with less stuff and more life. That apartment I described at the beginning, the one belonging to James Rivera earning $54,000 with 18 months of savings, belongs to someone applying these rules consistently. He didn't get there through exceptional income. He got there through exceptional clarity about what actually matters. The other apartment, the one belonging to Marcus Chen earning $97,000, whose 2 paychecks from crisis, belongs to someone who never questioned the assumption that more stuff equals better life. Both lifestyles are available to you regardless of what you currently earn. The choice is simply whether you want to own your possessions or whether you're comfortable with your possessions owning you. The mathematics strongly favors the first option. So does the peace of mind.